A few days ago, I was joined by my good friend Jason Lee, who is an incredible photographer, actor, skateboarder, just a legend all around. And we talked all about his newest book, In the Gold Dust Rush, which was published by Stanley Barker. I wanted to pick Jason's brain about not only the photos that were made, but what it was like putting the book together, working with Stanley Barker on publishing the book, the cover material, the paper type, all of the different choices you have when putting out a photo book. So here's the conversation. First of all, Jason, thank you for taking the time to catch up and talk about this book. I appreciate it.
I was so honored when you reached out and wanted to have a little chat.
It's been, I think, I'm trying to think how many years. I think it's been maybe 4 years since I had you on my podcast years ago. And, ever since then, obviously, I've enjoyed following along with everything you've done and different books. But today we're talking about your latest one, In the Gold Dust Rush, published by Stanley Barker and myself. And as I mentioned before we started rolling here, a lot of friends who have also picked up this book. We've all been really, really enjoying it. So congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm excited to kind of pick your brain a little bit, talk about the book.
Okay.
Before we kind of dive into like some of the specifics, why don't you tell us a little bit about these photos in particular, in terms of, they were taken over, 12 years, I think.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So tell me a little bit about that and kind of how these photos kind of came to you.
Well, I think we had talked about before, when I first started road tripping with cameras. It was back in 2006 when I was shooting the large format Polaroids out on the road. I did that once in 06 and then once in 07. And that's when I really knew that I was kind of destined to be in a car somewhere roaming this strange land of ours. And so in 08, I really started focusing on shooting conventional film. And so I went to, it was 35 millimeter black and white stuff is what I first started doing. And so I basically continued the kind of road trip tradition with the cameras in 08, but now it was mainly with 35 millimeter black and white film. And so the book has some of those early photos all the way up to last year, 2020. So I loved the 8x10 Polaroid stuff, but it was obviously a little bit cumbersome. But what those trips did for me, again, they solidified my passion, my desire to go out and explore. And it just became a lot easier to do with smaller cameras, obviously, because with the 8x10 Polaroid, you have the big 8x10 camera, the tripod, the dark cloth, the loop, the meter, and the 8x10 Polaroid film, which requires a processor, and then hanging on a clothesline in the back of my SUV at the time, the prints to dry, and then I would sleeve them, and it's a lot of work, right? So this was very liberating to just have a little 35 millimeter camera, but with the same kind of spirit and excitement about what's going to be around the next corner, and wanting to go to new towns and be on new highways that I'd never been on, and just kind of see what's out there. So it started in 08 with the black and white films. And so this book has a taste of the early stuff going up to 2020.
Yeah, I love that. It's interesting because I was just having a conversation with a couple friends today. We went on a hike, and we were grabbing different cameras we wanted to bring, and I just grabbed my Polaroid SX70, and that was it, and we were all, talking about what we've been shooting with lately and kind of talking about that kind of stuff. And I said, there's something about the less resistance you have to stop and take the photo, and inevitably taking more photos as a result of that. Because sometimes if it's a cumbersome setup, you might see something and you start playing that game of like, is it worth all of the time to set up, meter, do all of this, but if you've got just a quick, 35 millimeter camera, that had to feel so freeing.
You do kind of tend to depending on the kind of day you're having and the kind of breakfast you've eaten when you're out on the road and how much sleep you got the night before. But if you're not quite in the right frame of mind when you're driving around, yeah, the bigger equipment, you might kind of go, I'll pass it up. Do you know what I mean? But
Yeah, oh,
with
yeah.
smaller stuff, it's, even if you're like, I'm not sure, I'm just going to take a quick snap of it and keep moving, and you'll see if you like it later or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah, I've done that before
Definitely
where I
easier.
kind of take a quick photo and think, okay, if there's really something there and I want to revisit it with a different camera or a different
Yep.
process,
Yep.
but there's something to that, just kind of staying fluid, staying in motion, and
Sure.
not being locked down to one particular spot or scene, for
Yep.
so
That's right.
long. But
Yep.
it is interesting though, seeing a lot of the kind of subjects that I've seen in your other photos, in whether it be the Polaroid or the large format stuff, seeing those same scenes rendered in black and white. And I think it's, for a lot of people, for myself, it was really hard for a long time to even imagine seeing anything in color, because I was just so
Yeah.
focused on black and white, and it was like, I felt like anytime I took a color photo, I just thought, I don't, it's not translating as well. Do you ever
Yeah.
have anything like that from exploring different formats, and then to be able to take a collection of photos like this, all black and white? Is there like a difference for you and that kind of thing in terms of subject matter or light that you're looking for?
That's a really good question. I prefer black and white because it just feels a little bit more distant. It just feels a little bit more settled, kind of.
Yeah,
But for the Texas photos, I knew I wanted color, but
for
I knew
sure.
I wanted a certain palette. I tend to like a kind of flatter palette, and for the Texas stuff, I used my old speed graphic with an old 1941 uncoated lens, like a really flat kind of low contrast lens,
Yeah,
many years old, and overexposing the film and just flattening it out a little bit and getting more of that sort of that muted palette, which I really like. The Texas stuff I like a lot because of that palette. And I thought, well, I really love the movie Paris, Texas, and Robbie Mueller is one of my favorite cinematographers, and his palette in that film Paris, Texas is just absolutely stunning. And I thought, well, I'm living in Texas now. I want to roam the state more substantially than I had as a visiting photographer on prior road trips. And I looked back to that movie and I thought, well, if I'm going to kind of really explore Texas, I was really drawn to that palette. And so that's why I chose color film for that series. But I think I feel a little bit more of an intimate connection with black and white. It's hard to describe, and I've tried to do it before, but there's just something about it that's just I can never find the words for it. But it's
yeah. There's definitely it's just a different feel.
it is, yeah.
Sometimes I find color to be almost too much, too distracting. It's sort
Mm-hmm.
of like
Yeah,
my mind, or my eye at least, focuses on the color as opposed to the entire scene as a
sure.
subject,
Yeah. Well,
Um,
that's a good point, and I think for me that's why I tend to sort of give it a little bit of overexposure and kind of flatten it out a little bit so that you get a
right,
nice there's a nice hopefully a better relationship between, like you just said, the scene and the color. The color is complementing the scene, but it's not about the color. I tend to sort of like everything to be a little bit softer, a little bit quieter, a little bit gentler, a little bit more temperate, so
right.
that it's not super. I'm not I'm not much for high contrast and saturation. I like things to just be a little bit quieter, I think. And maybe that's the word if it applies with the black and white stuff. There's, for me, even more of a kind of stillness to the
Yeah,
black and white stuff.
absolutely. Yeah, the quieter, I think that's probably the best way to
Mm-hmm.
describe that. And
Yeah.
in kind of, especially over such a long period of time, what was that like, kind of not just, seeing the photos themselves all these years and finding something worth taking a photo, but when did the idea of these photos kind of living together in a book, when did that kind of start coming into mind? Was that through in the middle of that, or was that sort of after taking some time to look back at everything?
Well, I knew over the years that I loved black and white, especially, and that I wanted to eventually publish some of it.
Right.
Because I have a kind of a unique connection to the black and white stuff that I've done, a kind of special connection to it, and just all the memories of the early road trips, and I knew I wanted to do something, but I thought, well, I'll do something much later, and I was doing the Texas stuff, and then after that, the Oklahoma stuff. But in 2018, I got a direct message on Instagram from Gregory at Stanley Barker. And he said, "Hey, hope you're doing well. I'd like to talk to you if you're interested about maybe doing a black and white photo book." And I thought, wow, that's really cool. And then, that was 2 years ago. And then we eventually got around to actually starting to put something together about 6 months ago. And then the book came out in December. So
Yeah.
it was a while in the making, but it was because of that I thought, well, I guess it's going to happen sooner than I had anticipated, putting out some of the black and white stuff. And then, the idea was selected American photographs. It's not a retrospective. It's not, it's more of a kind of sampling of some of the American black and white stuff from over the last 12 years. And I sequenced it in such a way that it would sort of give a sampling of the variety of geography and of America, from the mountains to the desert and industry and suburbia and the Hollywood Hills even. It sort of meanders through this kind of, road trip, if you will,
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's, to me, what really stood out so much, and why it felt like it had that signature from seeing some of your other work, that sort of like road trip, like you said, basically spending all of your time in the car on the road,
Yeah.
which is one of my favorite things to do in photography, is to just go for a drive. And maybe if I make one photo, that's great, but just
Sure.
being out there and just kind of
It's the
looking
best.
is, yeah, I'm not on my phone. I'm not distracted. I'm just
Yep,
literally
that's
just
right.
driving. And if I'm
Yeah.
distracted by anything, it might be some, interesting light or an old sign or, something
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah,
But,
yeah,
but
yeah.
it's just, there's a sense of focus
Yeah,
that,
that's what you want to be distracted by. The
right.
stuff
Yeah,
you're hoping to find.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. That to me is what really stood out and made it feel, like your other books in a way, but just in a totally different way, even
Mm.
down to the printing, which the print quality is just, I mean, it feels like you're flipping through, a box of prints, individual prints that were made,
Wow.
which has just it's a really good way, I think, especially for black and white.
Hmm.
Anyone who has spent time in the dark room,
Hmm.
appreciating a really well done black and white print is
That's
just,
EBS in Verona, Italy.
yeah,
Of course, they've
beautiful,
printed
beautiful
many,
work.
many a photo book. Yeah, they do amazing printing.
Yeah, yeah, it turned out great. And even the cover materials and the type, the wrap, the cover band, even I like,
Yeah.
it's just it's a really well made and well produced book.
Wow.
When it came to like
Thank you.
the cover materials and things like that, did you have any sense of kind of ideas in mind? Was that more of a collaborative thing between you and Stanley Barker?
Yeah, it was collaborative. We knew we wanted to do something that kind of had like an American classic kind of
Yeah.
approach. And of course, you look at the old Walker Evans books,
Hmm.
uh, and uh, and we had talked about, do we do a kind of like a ghosted kind of map, like a kind of faded map, or these old kind of trade books, or like technical books that you might, we were looking at
Right.
old,
Yeah.
we were looking at old, like like a railroad system, like
Right. That's what I was
technical
going to
books
say.
from,
Yeah.
the 30s or something like that. And just something, not to overdo that or hit that on the head, but just, I like kind of things from bygone
I was
eras.
going
I
to say,
tend to
yeah,
kind of
things that
like
you don't see anymore, you know?
yeah, I mean, I liked, and so Gregory, he found a book with a band on it, an old book with an elastic band on it, and we thought that was interesting, and just a kind of classic typeface with a nice linen, with the foil stamp and everything, and so we played around with a kind of classic approach, and then Gregory ultimately brought to the table the cover that you see there.
Yeah. I love
Yeah.
that. Yeah. I think sometimes it's hard for me anytime I'm kind of fleshing out ideas for any kind of project, especially if the end goal in mind is to publish it and put it in a book and those kinds of decisions. Sometimes it's the idea of figuring all of that out early on it can be really daunting and can just seem kind of overwhelming, but I think
Yes.
a lot of it is that sort of trial and error, just throwing out ideas and figuring
Yeah.
out what feels best.
Yeah. Bookmaking by no means is easy. It's a
Right.
disaster. It's such a headache, man.
I
Because
was
you
going to say,
scrutinize the printing and you scrutinize it's just so much work, man.
yeah, it is a
It's
lot. That's
like
for
editing a
sure.
film or something. You shoot it all and then you have to edit it. And a good editing makes or breaks a movie. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And then the digital work that goes from the film to scanning the film and all the digital interface work and color grading and then all the editing. I mean, all of that really is, it's not just what happens on the day when you're making a movie.
Right.
It's really the editing, what happens in the editing is like, can make a movie feel like it's fast or feel like it's slow, or editing is so important. And so it's a drag. It's kind of a drag because it could go a million different ways. You know what I
Right.
mean? And so you don't always know what's going to work.
Yeah. And
A long
even,
process.
depending on the day, some days you might feel like you have something that, okay, it's starting to kind of flow together and I'm seeing things
Yeah.
differently, but then revisit it with fresh eyes and,
And
okay,
you
maybe
go,
back to
why
square
did I
one.
want that photo there? Yeah, exactly. But then
Exactly.
at a certain point, you have to just let it go
Yeah.
and let it start to find some life of its own if it's going to,
Yeah.
But there's always the scrutinizing and, should I have done that? Maybe I should have done that instead. But at a certain point, you just have to let it be its own thing.
Yeah. I used to have a lot of issue with thinking that something like that has to be this forever perfect portfolio type thing and making sure that in 10 years I'm going to feel exactly the same way about
Not going to
something and
happen.
ever. Yeah. And it just
No.
it stopped me from pursuing so many different projects because I would just think, well, I'm not ready yet. I need to make sure I have all the details ironed out and
Yeah.
it's going to be perfect. But I've started to look at it in a much different way, that focus on the quality, obviously, but you can kind of look at things like that the way artists look at releasing band or releasing albums, like a band releasing an album, and they take something in a different approach and
Hmm.
try it out and branch out a little bit. It
Hmm.
might not age the same way another one does, but
Hmm.
it's you unless you actually put it out there and release it and let
Yeah.
it live, like you said,
Yep.
like
That's right.
it's
Yeah.
hard to see it any other way than how you've always viewed it,
I mean, I guarantee you there's not a photo book on those shelves behind you where the photographer does not wish he or she could go back and take out pages 3 through 5 or
Right.
reprint it because they feel the photos are too flat or
Yeah.
too punchy, or they didn't like the sequencing on the last 18 pages or whatever. You look at it and you go, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so to your point, you just have to let it go because 99% of people viewing what you've created aren't going to notice the things you are killing yourself over.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's not an
Yeah.
album you've listened to where the musician or musicians hasn't gone, oh, why did I put track 8 in there? And
Right.
that's one of your favorite songs on the album. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's like you just
I
you have to
always,
let it go.
yeah, I always reference Tom Petty's song "Free Fallin'" was a
Yeah.
song that they almost didn't put on the record because they just thought it doesn't really fit with the rest of the album, and maybe this would make a good B-side someday. It's not really, it doesn't fit, and it goes on to become one of his most famous
And
songs,
it
of
made a
course.
lot of people happy and probably bought him a few houses.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the world keeps spinning. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. It does keep spinning. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's very, very true though. And kind of to speak about the sequencing and the editing, did you have to kind of go back through the archive of all of those years? Had you been kind of putting things aside, or what did that look like to kind of approach such a wide range of time, in photos?
Well, I can show you that those big silver drawers
Yeah.
are top to bottom full of photos, mostly 35. And
Oh my
that's just
gosh.
one of my units.
Right.
So, I mean, on my hard drives, I had a lot of kind of just quick low res scans of
Yeah.
various roles from over the years. And remember, most of that is positive black and white, right?
Right.
From DR5.
Yeah. Yeah.
So basically what I did, and this was because I knew I had only a 10th scanned. So I went through all the slides on a light box, and I sleeved the ones I thought I would maybe want to use. And that turned out, for this book, that turned out to be about 250, 300 slides, mostly 35 and some 120, 6.6 and 6.7.
Right.
And then I put it on the light box, and I literally, with my iPhone, I would snap the photos because I didn't want to scan everything because I didn't know what I was going to use.
Exactly.
So literally with a light box, with my iPhone, snap, take the next slide, snap, and then I'd crop it. And then I dumped it all into my computer. So I had, but I'd crop it the right aspect ratio.
Right. Right.
2.3 for 35 and 4.5 for 6.7 and square for 6.6.
Yeah.
So I had all these quick reference images from the Lightbox. And then and then what I do is I just use Keynote. So I just have blank canvas pages, and then I just start sliding them over from the hard drive.
Yeah.
These
Yeah.
iPhone reference photos. And then I just start shuffling around. I go, okay, here's a bunch of desert stuff. Here's a bunch of mountain stuff. Here's a bunch of rural stuff, suburbia or whatever that is. And then I don't really know InDesign, so I just use Pages.
Yeah.
Because I guess right. And so I said, we talked about, okay, we want the book about 11 by 10 inches. Okay, so I would make that, and I'd lay a bunch of pages out. And then I'd just start dragging stuff from Keynote, because Keynote, I had everything sort of grouped together, and then just start laying out the book with pages. And that took months, of course. And then I would make whatever layout I was working on, I would export it as a PDF, and then I would send that PDF to Gregory in London. Hey,
Right.
here's kind of what I'm thinking right now, and what do you think? He said, oh, I love this section, and we just kind of went back and forth on the phone via email and WhatsApp.
Yeah.
And it whittled down from, I did like the director's cut, so the first Pages book was like, 200 pages or something. and we whittled it down to 112 pages and 84 images. But sometimes it takes just dumping it all out
Yeah.
to be able to kind of cone it back in. You know what I mean? And then I did all my sizing that way, and once all the sequencing was dialed in, I made sure all my sizing was right because it was sized. The images were sized very specifically. And then I scanned everything properly, just the final images.
Right.
And then I think I'm probably rambling on. I'm sorry.
No, take as much time as you want.
I realized your question was the art going through all the images and stuff. And
yeah, no, but this is,
process.
I mean, this is stuff that I think anybody can appreciate and kind of learn from and be able to apply.
It's helpful. I mean, if everybody has their method, and then
Right.
basically and then from there, once I got everything scanned, I made my match prints because
Gotcha.
I make match prints.
Yeah.
And so I'm using a pigment printer, and but I'm doing them the way I would do them if they were final pigment prints, digital prints.
Right.
I'm not using cheap proofing paper. I'm using fiber-based Baryta paper, and I'm printing them the way I would want to see them if I were framing them. Because Gregory was like, look, you send us the match prints however you want them. And then Alex at Flow Photographic, he does all the duotone separations. And then EBS, when they're printing the pages, they're referencing my match prints. So you just do what you do, and then we'll do our best with the separations and with the printing to match your match prints. So then I had to spend another month making my match prints.
Yeah.
And I try to do that under dimish lighting, because most people who view photo books, as you know, they're not looking at them under gallery lighting.
Right.
And so I try to do it under relatively low light, so there's good exposure to the print, even under lower lighting conditions. And then I put everything in a binder and I sent the match prints off, and I got the separations, and I looked at them and they looked wonderful. And that was that.
Yeah.
So it's a ton of it's a ton of work, but it's really fun.
Yeah. I mean, there's that collaboration between you and anybody you might be working with, whether it be the people printing the book, someone helping you sequence things. It's just really having that kind of fresh set of eyes and just a different perspective on things can be super helpful, because when we're so close to the source, as the photographer who made all the photos, sometimes you might have a bias to one photo or another.
That's right. Yeah.
Just that whole process, there's so much to learn. And again, that's why I wanted to hear just what it looked like for you, because it's different for everybody. And I love personally hearing other photographers talk about their process when it comes to that kind of stuff, because
that's what I like about what you've been doing for so long, because you walk a good line between the technical and the creative.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. It's important. Like I nerd out like you. I nerd out.
Yeah.
Like a lot of photographers, I love to know about this stuff, and I'd love to know. I'd love to hear more photographers talk about their process, because it's not just snapping some photos, getting them scanned, and then having a book made.
Right.
I mean, unless you're not as nitpicky as I am.
Right.
You probably are. I mean, it's a very personal process, and
definitely
there's a lot of technical stuff that goes into it. But I would always recommend making match prints, especially if you can't be on press.
That's what I've just done. I've just done that myself. Luckily, my good friend Kevin O'Meara is in Minneapolis, where the book is being printed. It's through a place in Minneapolis. It's actually being printed in Canada, a place called Friesens. So it's being printed there, but the
You
people
made
on site.
match prints, you were saying, right?
Yeah, yeah. So Kevin and I worked on that. He basically made the match prints. Because of everything going on, I can't be physically
Yeah,
on site
that's
for
right.
that. So Kevin made the prints based on a long, a lot of long conversations between, he and I on what I liked in terms of printing.
Hmm.
And then he overnighted those to me. And basically I went through and signed off on every page to make sure, okay, this is
That's right. Yeah.
exactly, and then overnighted them back to him. He
Yep.
delivered them, and
Wow.
it's a lot of back and forth, but
It is.
it's those fine details. And then we had test prints made, and we weren't thrilled with the contrast of the paper as well as the weight of the paper. So we thought, okay, let's change that. We're going to change the paper type. It's a lot of back and forth, and
It's
it's a
so
lot of
much.
time. But
Mhm.
at the end of it, I would rather get the finished product to be exactly what I want versus something that I just rushed out the door. So those long
Yeah.
conversations, and
Are
it's
are
worth
vital.
it.
If you care, if you really care, it's
Right.
it's it's vital. There are many moving parts and many factors involved,
Yeah.
and match printing is key, definitely, and good scans, obviously,
Yeah.
and working with people that get who you are, and
Yeah.
they understand that. I mean, I must have driven Gregory crazy because I'm very very particular, but yeah, and so once we finalized the images, I had them scanned, like I said, and then once I made my match prints, then those files went over to London for the separations, and then picking the paper. So I got paper samples, and then I got samples from EBS, and okay, the paper looks good, the ink looks good, the varnish looks good. It's not too much, it's not too little, it's subtle. Okay, good. And then once you sign off on it, that's what you do. You know what I mean?
Right.
And the
Yeah.
design was pretty well wrapped up. I think the last thing we decided on was the color of the end sheets.
Oh, okay.
That sort of caught that chocolatey kind of in. We were like, okay, I guess we're done, and that was
Right.
that. Yeah.
Which has to be such I mean, relieving, but again, also like, okay, no going back from here.
No,
It's
no going back. Yeah.
yeah.
No going
No.
back. Unless you're doing a second printing, and then you can make all the changes you wish you would have made on the first printing.
Yep, I know all too well how that
Yep.
goes.
Your
But
last book is great, man.
thank you. I appreciate that. It was that
I
was
loved it.
I mean, it was a quick
Right over
kind of
there on the
thing
shelf.
that well, that means a lot. I really appreciate that. Once this one gets finished and shipped out, then it'll be to you soon. So I again appreciate your support on that one as well.
Absolutely. You too, man. What
It's
what's what is that going to be shipping?
we're looking at middle of February right now.
You'll get
That's sort
your
of
copies mid-February.
yeah. So with all things going on, we're still not sure if I'm going to be going to Minneapolis to sign everything, um, depending on all the guidelines and just obviously safety and health is kind of our main
Yeah.
priority right now. So we're still trying to
Oh,
figure
so
that
the
out.
books
But
will ship from Minneapolis as well.
yeah, yeah. So
You
the
got to sign
goal,
those suckers. How are you going to do that? How many? How many?
it's an edition of 1750. So
1750. And
yeah.
what's the drive to Minneapolis from where you are?
I honestly can't even remember. I want to say around 8 hours, which
That's it?
I mean, that's the thing. It's like,
Put your mask on and go, and bring your pen and go sign those books, man.
that's the thing. It's like Midwest. It's like everything is sort of, oh, that's a day's drive. I could make that.
Yeah.
So the plan is to go there, sign every copy, and then package them up, and then ship them out directly, all the pre-orders at least right away in Minneapolis.
Okay.
Potentially sign every copy, package them up, and then hiring my friend Kevin, who actually works at a bookstore, who is regularly shipping
Okay.
books,
Okay.
potentially keeping them there, and they'll already be signed and sealed and
Oh,
packaged.
great. Good.
And as the rest sell, he can, slap a label on and
Oh,
out
that's
the
great.
door.
That sounds perfect.
That's the goal. We will see. But yeah, we're very, very excited about
Can't
getting
wait.
it done.
Can't wait.
But again, all of the long conversations and work hopefully will lead to a
Yeah.
book we're happy with. And again, everything you did in terms of decision wise on the paper, the printing, the scanning, all of that stuff, couldn't be happier for you with what you guys
Oh,
made,
thank you
because this
so much,
is,
Matt.
yeah, it's really, really great.
I've gotten the Matt Day stamp of approval.
Hey, I don't know if that's worth much outside of my YouTube channel, but I'll take it.
Oh, it is, man. It is for sure.
No, again, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk about the book, and
Of course. Yeah.
it's always good catching up. I don't want to keep you too long from the family, so if there's anything you'd like to kind of share or end the conversation with, anything you'd like to say, the floor is yours.
Oh, wow. Can we get any questions from the audience? Anybody out there?
I think I see people going into the concession area now, so maybe.
Yeah, they've left me. They're bored already. They went into they went to go get more popcorn.
Right.
No, I don't know. I mean, I think we covered everything.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to ask, or
I've
go
yeah,
be dads and
that, I mean, that's
enjoy a Friday night?
That's how we spend most of our time anyways.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I mean, honestly, because I mean, there is always a tremendous sense of vulnerability when you're making anything and you're putting it out there. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And so it's certainly encouraging when people respond favorably to something that you've done, especially when it's something that, you don't quite know if it's exactly, with all the variables, you know what I mean? And
Exactly.
and there's always little things that you question, like we were talking about. And so when you get a positive response, it really does help put that vulnerability at ease a little bit. You know what I mean? It's anything creative is going back to the skateboarding days when we would make, when we made the first stereo video of visual sound in 1994, we were being really artsy with the Super 8 cameras and all that stuff, but we were genuinely passionate about it. And, we definitely had some folks that were not really into it because they thought it was maybe a little too artsy or whatever. But I guess
stayed true to yourself. You followed your gut.
True to yourself. You know what I mean? I talked to one pro skater, a good friend of mine, who said, I remember seeing that video and not getting it and thinking you guys were just too like artsy. But as I've gotten older, I've come to understand what you guys were trying to do. And I thought that was a nice kind of compliment,
Absolutely. I mean, I think I do that with music all the time. I'll listen to an older artist that maybe, when I was younger, I'm like, I don't see the appeal, or I don't get it, but it's just with time, perspective is always, or it's always changing.
Yeah. So knowing that you're going to be vulnerable to some degree or another, you may as well do what you want and what makes you happy, because either way there's going to be screw ups and people that aren't going to like what you do. You know what I mean? So you may as well really do what makes you happy. You know what I mean? These photos in this book are great reminders for me of road trips that I've been on with my family. You know what I mean? And all the Hollywood Hills photos at the end of the book, that was from when we lived up in Los Feliz, up in the hills by Griffith Park, and family walks in the evenings with my little point and shoot. And some of those photos made it into the book, and they remind me of that time, and having that personal connection and having that genuine enthusiasm for what you're doing. And I mean, you have to have that. I mean, that's the number one, I think, ingredient, just, what makes you happy is really the gauge, I think.
Yeah.
It makes the vulnerability of releasing something easier to manage when you are personally really happy about what you're doing. There's a real passion there.
And it's especially, as much putting as much sort of a personal perspective or a personal side of you in the work, and putting it out there. And again, that, like you said, the vulnerability in that. And then when other people receive it, have their own perspective and life and everything, but for them to be able to still connect with it, it's a really, really special thing.
It is very, very special. Absolutely. And have their own feeling about it.
Exactly.
Totally different from your connection to the photos. Yeah.
Right. And
really special.
With a book, it's not something they're scrolling past. It's something that's going to live in their home, and there's something to that. That's just, it's very, very special. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that covers it. Yeah. Like you said, I think so much, Matt.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for everything that you're doing for the photography community and film. And
I appreciate that.
And I can't wait to get your book, man.
Yeah. I appreciate it. I'll be definitely excited to get it done. Hopefully when everything, when it's safe again, we'll have to get together and flip through some books.
And meet. I want to start doing that. That's an idea.
Yes.
A long time. I want to start meeting photographers.
Yeah.
Like,
let's arrange something.
We're going to meet in such and such Arizona.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then you spend a few days roaming, and then you shoot with that group of people in one region, and you put out a zine.
Yeah.
And then you meet another group of people in Louisiana, and you shoot that region, and you put out a zine.
Yeah.
I love that. It's easy to forget all the ideas and the plans during a pandemic.
Yeah.
But I miss that. I miss going to Policon and Texas and group shows and stuff, and
exactly
road tripping with friends and gatherings and events and stuff. I miss that. I hope we get back to that sooner than later.
Yeah, it's easy for life and schedules to get busy and think, well, when things are just crazy right now, maybe eventually. But I think this past year has taught us, make the time. Don't just wait for it to show up.
Don't take it for granted, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Awesome, Matt. Thank you so much, man.
Yeah, always a pleasure. I'll
you too, man.
Give the family our love, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, man. Awesome. Thanks, man.
I hope you guys enjoyed that conversation. I hope you came away from it feeling inspired and ready to put some of your own work out there and tackle your own projects. If you are interested in checking out more of this work, I'll put links down below, and feel free to share any thoughts or comments of your own on the conversation in the comments down below. But that's it for today. Thank you guys for everything. I love you. I'll see you next time.